If you'd like to join the conversation, remember 0809 444 That's the WhatsApp number to send your messages to. On Twitter, we are at Snooze981FM. Use the hashtag freshlypressed981. And we're streaming live on YouTube. If you'd like to watch, you can send your message through that through the platform as well. Just use the live chat option. All right, let's go straight to our first story. Justin, now start with you. CBN to partner with Varsities to boost poultry production. Now, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, said the Apex Bank has initiated a program to boost poultry production in the country through involving universities, and this will be part of the pilot team to run a university-based poultry revival program. What's your take on this?
The chicken population is... Why are you laughing?
That's a direct... that can't start.
No, it has to start from there.
That couldn't have started.
That is a direct quote from this article. They actually use that phrase. The chicken population is about 165 million. At least we know one part of our population that we have an exact.
No,
we know that we have
about it's still an approximation.
It's not a definite figure.
Okay, fine, I concede. The chicken population is about 165 million, which produces approximately 650,000 metric tons and 300,000 metric tons of eggs and meat, respectively. Okay, back to the serious aspect of this. So the CBN continues its interventionist agenda, which is what I like to call it, with this announcement. So it's been Uncle Mefi and the team have been basically looking at the entire economy and looking at areas where, of course, we all know that agriculture is a major focus for this administration.
Yes, it is, particularly for the CBN under Mr. Godwin Emefiele's administration. He has been quite involved in
agriculture and intervention projects there. So he wants to close the supply gap in the sector, reduce FX pressure, build up new entrepreneurs in that space. Also deal with issues like about high costs in the poultry business, safety issues because of sanitary conditions of most of the markets where we buy chicken from. He observes that there's no automation and there's a lot of smuggling, and these are all the challenges that he's trying to address with this program. But I have two questions. Why the universities? And what happened to the Bank of Industry and the Bank of Agriculture?
My own question would be, why the CBN?
Exactly. That's the same thing I'm saying. Why is this intervention coming? Yeah, I understand he's at the apex of the entire financial system, but I think we're replicating a lot of things, and I begin to wonder, so what are certain organizations like the BOI and the Bank of Agriculture for? If the CBN is going to get directly involved with lending to, now it's not farmers, now it's universities. The article unfortunately doesn't tell us much about what universities are involved. I don't know how many universities have such a robust poultry farm, because he goes on about, we've chosen you because of your existing infrastructure. I don't know which universities have this extensive infrastructure that warrant this, but hey, this is what the CBN is about to do. I do have questions. I recognize that this article doesn't give us a lot of information. I'm going to read up more about it in my spare time and probably engage on it on social media.
Yes.
But this is what Uncle Mefi and the CBN.
All right. So he's go on. Okay.
No, I was just going to say on the side. Fun fact: we have a definite number for the universities we have in Nigeria. 148.
148.
Okay.
All right. So just to maybe answer a few of the questions. Justin, just to answer a few of the questions you've raised, a few points in the article states that the intervention was directly in conformity with the Apex Bank's resolve to diversify the economy. So that's one of the things they mentioned they'll do, to be a catalyst for job creation and inclusive economic growth. And why they chose universities, they mentioned the fact that we rely on the university-based poultry production model because you have the existing infrastructure. So they talked about infrastructure, talk about experience and human assets to enable production and reduce costs.
Are you not tired of that phrase, diversified economy? I've been hearing it since primary school.
But they're taking active action. So this is what he's doing now. So rather than just sit and just talk about it and implement, or possibly implement policies, they want to now directly intervene to ensure that this is
in the chicken population.
I mean, it's a start.
Get over it already.
All right. Okay. So let's hear from our listeners this morning. Do you think, what's your take on this? Is it a good move? Do you think the chicken population, because they've mentioned that.
I joined.
I honestly feel that this is a metaphor for something. That is probably not safe for morning radio. I would just put that out there.
But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one.
No, actually, I'm vitamin deprived.
All right, let's move on to our next story. Well, we'll take your comments very shortly. We see a few of them coming in. We'll get to them very soon. But Ikemesit, another interesting conversation we've been having from the past week is with regards to Senator Elisha Abbo. There's an update on that assault case. It's now in the court, the Chief Magistrate's Court in Zuba, and they've granted a 5 million naira bail to him hours after the police arraigned him. But what's very interesting about this story is that he's pleaded not guilty. The full story is in the Vanguard newspaper, but Ikemesit, please, I love the fact that you can give us from a lawyer's perspective the angle or the technicalities whereby he's come out to apologize for his actions, and now he's in court and he's saying he's pleading not guilty to what he's been charged for.
Yeah, back to human populations, right? The entire conversation about Senator Elisha Abbo it's been quite an interesting one. I know lots of people on social media have been like, oh, why is he pleading not guilty even though he's had, and it's been the subject of one too many, a viral thread. We also had a situation where they're having demonstrations, the latest being the National Council for Women's Societies, which essentially said that they don't accept his apology, and that his behavior was an exhibition of barbaric habits with respect to women, and essentially viewing and portraying and treating women as though they were animals and not human beings, right? But so that's the wider perspective, right, of the entire situation. To the meat of the story itself, which is with respect to the narrow legal technical aspect, right, there is a reason why he pleaded not guilty. One, he did it on legal advice. Two, and please, Lagos, don't come for my head. I'm just explaining the legal technicalities. This is in no way an endorsement of his behavior. It was sound, it was sound legal advice, and here's why. This is a criminal offense, assault that he committed, and the burden of proof, right? So essentially, the bar that the prosecution has to scale, right, with respect to proving that he committed the offense in court is a very high one. You've got to prove that beyond all reasonable doubt.
Why
now,
I'm coming for you.
I'm coming. So that's a brilliant question, Kayode. It's a high one because the philosophical thinking, right, in law is that it is better for 1,000 guilty men to be set free than to have one innocent man wrongly convicted of an offense. So the prosecution has to do a very good job of proving that you actually did it, you had the intent to hurt other persons, and it was an offense to the whole of society. Hence, it was defined as a crime. Why he pleaded not guilty in this case was that it preserves that burden of proof, right, in the hands of the prosecution. The prosecution gets to do that work fully in court. If he had pleaded guilty, basically the prosecution would not have had to lead any evidence in court. All the prosecution would essentially have done would be show up on the day at the magistrate court in Zuba and essentially ask the court, he has admitted, we want X as the penalty, right, for it.
With the overwhelming evidence, though.
So that's the thing, right? So and that's the interesting catch. So the burden of proof still exists with the prosecution, but he's already confessed.
That brings me to a conversation that we had offline last week. And that's I think it was Justin, wasn't it? We're talking about, I don't know if it was you, we're talking about this with regards to...
It was just a lopsided conversation, for the record.
We're talking about prosecutors and why we have so many cases that should obviously go a certain way in Nigeria and not go that certain way. We have these technicalities. Then we have a man like Senator Elisha Abbo who would come with an array of lawyers. He can afford to pay these lawyers. However, the prosecution team acting on behalf of the state or defending or the police are not as well funded. I think it was probably I didn't care. Talking about the lawyers not being well equipped, not paid enough.
Yeah, not paid enough.
They are no match.
Overburdened with a lot of cases.
So they are no match.
So it's not a fair fight.
Yes, it's not a fair fight. So very likely, as we see in many cases in the past, they don't come with enough proof. So the hands of the judges are tied and they cannot. So it's just for people to understand
And
what
guys,
they're facing.
let me quickly say that the reason why I said I was going to come for you.
I just explained the law. Don't come for me.
No, see, we have to elevate the conversation in our country above technicalities when it comes to legal issues, particularly, or let me limit this assertion to when public figures, elected officials in particular, are involved. Hold your horses. The question for me here is of a much higher moral value than is he guilty or not in the eyes of the law. You are an elected senator of the Federal Republic. There are certain things that you should be above. In this instance, you were caught on video. You've made statements.
So what happens? So what happens then?
So first and foremost, come clean, both on the social arena and in court. Don't try to fight it based on technicality, because it just tells me you are wired all wrong. And I think that we need to begin to hold people to a much higher standard when they attain public office than this. It's okay to say from a purely judicial point of view, right?
Yes.
The burden of proof is on the prosecution. But hey, this man ordinarily occupies an office that represents who we are as a people. Do you understand? That's why I hold him to a much higher standard. First of all, he should have been telling us how he's resigning from office.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm largely agreed with you, right?
Yeah,
or generally with what he needs to do. But the point is, a lot of the things that you're talking about now cannot be solved by the law. The law can compel him to resign. The law can compel him to do a lot of things, right? So it's
the conversation and the expectation.
Plus,
we know that.
All right. Okay.
When
let's
people
go
get
to our
themselves
comment.
into this
Let's
position.
go to our comment. I know a lot of people are raring to go in terms of speaking their mind. So I'd love to hear from Lagos and those who are listening to us at the moment on what they have to say. But thanks a lot, Ikemesit, and just no violence. Let's go to our comment.
This one from Joaquin says the CBN is interested in everything else except its real job, which should be combating inflation, chasing chickens left and right when inflation is 11%. Uncle Goody thinks this is a joke.
All right. Lara from Lekki says, Bank of Industry is strictly for manufacturing, also known as industry, includes agro-processing, not agriculture. BOA is being recapitalized. Much work to be done, though. I agree. All right, thanks, Lara, for your comment. We have Shegun here. Shegun says,
this is the first government that is taking practical and determined steps to diversify the economy. Small steps yet, but give little credit where it's due. If earlier government had done their bits to diversify, we would have been further down the road.
All right, thanks a lot, Shegun. Ojo says, to the chicken issue, I feel it's towards research funding and development of various vaccines. And on the senator's issue, he most likely pled not guilty so that the case can be dragged as long as it can till it will be settled or trashed. So that's another perspective on that.
Can I just make one quick distinction, right? In this case is a bit of a narrow case. So I don't think you can really use this as a wider test case for the inefficiencies of our judiciary, because again, he has confessed on video. It might not have been authentic, people have rejected it, but that is evidence that the prosecution can use, right? So that body still exists, but then it's also provided evidence for the other side.
Can it be settled out of court?
So, typically, crimes of this nature, it's in my experience and in the experience of a lot of people that I know, it's pretty difficult, right, to have it settled out of court. You could have a fine, you could have suspended jail time, but it's pretty hard. It's not a civil case. This is not the EFCC something.
All right, thank you very much indeed. All right, let's go. This is an interesting comment with regards to the CBN's policy on agriculture and chickens. Adinka from Ikoyi says, most of all, if not all federal universities have large hectares of school farm that's run by the Faculty of Agriculture. I graduated from OAU and our farm year at 400 level was important in giving students direct access to agribusiness, including poultry. So yes, there's an existing infrastructure and technical expertise of the faculty, lecturers, and support staff. So yes, it's a great initiative, maybe not CBN lecture. All right, so that the two parts. Great initiative, yes. Who should be leading this? not sure. And let's go to our next story, Justin. Thanks a lot for your comments. Please keep them coming in. We'll take some as well from Twitter and YouTube. Justin, NNPC's financials clean, open to EFCC, says Barrow, who is the immediate past group managing director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, Mekanti Barrow. He said that the organization's books were clean and welcome for EFCC to scrutinize if they wanted to. Can you please take us through the story?
Okay, so Mekanti Barrow is leaving the NNPC, or has just left the NNPC, and he's making these comments, and I'm wondering to myself, why are you talking about the EFCC being? Is that a tacit admission of what we all know about the NNPC, and the state of its financial affairs? In any case, he goes on to say that to talk about the things that he achieved while he was in this office. Okay, he had a 12-point agenda while he was there. The jury is out, as far as I'm concerned, about how much he did achieve, because even from the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development stats, our downstream sector receded over the last 20 years, as reported in this article. But Kanti says that the EFCC is welcome to look at the books of the NNPC. The report goes on somehow to mention that Ijeh Chukwu was conspicuously absent at this event. I don't know why that was necessary, but it's in there. I think we need something to be done about the NNPC. Okay. I can hold on to this comment alone as reason why that needs to happen. But his successor, Mele Kyari, has pledged to prioritize accountability and transparency.
To be fair, Mekanti Barrow pledged.
He also made the same pledge.
He made the same pledge, and the guy before him, and the guy before him.
Right. So the issue here is not about their pledge. The issue is about people holding them accountable to that pledge and actually ensuring that it's as transparent as possible. A number of people have talked about how, would I say, opaque their finances have been. So in terms of being able to understand,
including a former CBN governor. Yeah, he did talk about it.
Yes, he did.
Some people say that got him fired, but
yes. Well, Justin, be very careful. I don't want to get into trouble, but it's important to note that we've talked a lot about accountability, just like we talked about with the senator, and apart from there, the onus on them being responsible enough to understand the office that they hold, but also the people as well, for us to have a higher standard of what we demand from these officers, whether it be public.
Start by agitating for the petroleum industry bill to be signed.
That's another conversation. But let's move on very quickly.
All three bills.
Ikemesit, let me come to you for this one. Update on the tribunal, the election tribunal between President Muhammadu Buhari and the presidential candidate of the PDP, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. So the report here from Guardian states that President Buhari yesterday objected to the admission of his form CF001, which contained his personal data submitted to INEC for the February 23 presidential election. Could you please just take us through the report? Also highlights a few things that happened during the course of the tribunal, but just this particular one made headline. And why did he refuse? Is he able to refuse without going ahead to declare?
Okay, so the Guardian report is a very exhaustive blow-by-blow account. I would encourage any of our readers who has spare time and is interested in what is going on in the courts to check that out. It's not exactly clear to me why his lead counsel, Leonard Senior Chief Ayo Mairo-Ese, said that the reason for his client's objection to the admission of that evidence and to the admission of that form, rather, as evidence will be made public at the address stage. So literally when they are making their arguments before the tribunal, which, since this is an election petition tribunal, should happen soon. So maybe right about, if not this month, then at some point next month, that should happen. So it would really become clear. I suppose just going by, so while I do not specifically know why this was the case, from a strategic sort of perspective, I would hazard a guess as to the fact that in court, really, for the most part, anything that's admitted as evidence,
Yes.
right, can be torn and shredded and, interpreted anyway, depending on what side of
Yes.
divide you're
So
in. And exactly, and maybe the president doesn't want to play that. Take note, this is a leader whose educational qualifications have been called into question.
Yes. There's a story there.
Exactly. There are even fringe elements that even question his credibility to be there on account of citizenship and age and all of those things. So, probably having a document in court, and this is a public proceedings, we are reading about it. We would know what the contents of the form are, right? And it will go beyond age and all of those things. It will be fairly exhaustive. INEC tends to be very exhaustive about what they require from their candidates. Having all of this in the public ether, right, might, from his own end, be a little problematic.
So the question is
why that would be the case is the intriguing.
Yes, the question is he
and
allowed
Justin
to
is
do
giving
that?
me that look that I don't like.
Is he allowed to do that? At the end of the day, is it? If he doesn't admit his CF001 form, is that all right by the court?
No, I mean the rules allow him to do that, right? If the rules didn't allow him, there would have almost been an instant rejection by the tribunal, by the judges. So, to the extent where you could request for it
under the FOI.
Yeah, under the FOI, I think it is. But then again, making an FOI request and then tendering something in court are two different animals.
Ade has this one here on WhatsApp. I work in the oil and gas sector, and NNPC has never in its history had more money for projects. Kudos to him. Thank you, Ade.
Okay, so let's move on to the next story. And this one has to come back to you, Ikemesit. It says here, federal government wants South Africa to account for murder of Mrs Ndubuisi Chukwu. And it's quite exhaustive a little, but it's through the chairperson of the Nigeria Diaspora Commission. This is Abike Dabriera. She's asking questions basically.
Yes, so I believe all our listeners all remember, or for those who do not know, Mrs. Elizabeth Ndubuisi Chukwu, who happens to be the Deputy Director General of the Chartered Insurance Institute of Nigeria, was attending a conference of the African Insurance Organization in South Africa, which was founded in a hotel room in Joburg on June 13th. There has been a groundswell of what's the word now? Something in between outrage and surprise, really, because for the most part, when Nigerians have run into problematic situations in South Africa, it has been a certain cadre of Nigerians and not necessarily the ones who go there attending conferences, for example. So this obviously should be a thing of concern, not only to the authorities but also to Nigerians who regularly go to South Africa. And I think lots of people underestimate the fact that lots of us travel to that part of the world, right? And so it could literally be any traveler. South Africa has a very massive PR and branding effort around promoting tourism and also promoting inter-African tourism. And so, this does not help, and it would be in their interest as well as us that an investigation and prosecutions happen.
But because it's muted, what would you recommend that should be done? Because now they're just talking about asking them to,
What's your definition of muted? You want us to go out on the streets before this becomes a major conversation? It's been out there in the all of the important people all of the important persons who should be speaking about this issue have, and Nigerians have also been speaking about it on social media. So I don't really think muted would be a very good way to characterize our reaction to this. I'm actually quite impressed that we have not done what we have traditionally done in the past, where we begin to turn everything South African in this part of the world into fair point.
Yes,
I think that's why the sense of it's been muted. There's been so many things happening back to back. But someone like this, someone strangled in a hotel room, doesn't say that in the story, but I've been following the story.
It's in the story. In the
it's
Vanguard.
actually
the third line.
It is.
Okay, I think that's a very, very strong manifestation of the kind of things that have been happening to Nigerians in that part of Africa.
And should be looked
We
into.
should
to-
take it on.
To be fair, South Africa has a crime problem. So it's
All
not
right,
just
thank you very much,
Nigerians are
Ikemesit.
specifically being targeted, I think.
Let's move on to the next one. This one comes to you, Justin. It's from Premium Times. It's an update as well. Customs officer hospitalized for mental health illness. And Justin, you know what? Just take us through it real quick.
Okay, so for those who may not have been following the story, a gentleman in the customs service showed up at the Comptroller General's office yesterday and told him that he had been directed to assume office and that he should please hand over. So the first time, when news first broke, they said the guy, nobody mentioned mental illness, okay? We just said that this guy believes that he had been directed by the Commander-in-Chief to do that. But then as the day went by yesterday, the story evolved, and we have this news item now saying that Mr. Nurat Al-Hatu, that's the name of the man, is mentally ill. This is according to the customs spokesperson Joseph Atta, who spoke to Premium Times. He said that it was obvious he was not in the right frame of mind from the questions he was asked and the answers that he gave. He says he's been hospitalized for appropriate evaluation and treatment. Some people in the studio are telling me to stop right there. So I'm not going to give my opinion about what I think this is.
But that's actually what wants here.
stress.
Oh, really?
No, go ahead. I just thought.
I smell cover up. You know? I don't know what happened, but if you ask me, all my conspiracy theory wires are crossed and sparking.
No, let's leave for
Yeah, very good time to
That's what
actually
I'm
cut
thinking.
cut
That's
in.
I'm
What do you
admitting
think?
to it right now. But okay, seriously now.
Yeah.
So I already told you what happened yesterday.
Yes.
This news broke, and then eventually the customs released the statement. I honestly do think if the man is ill, he should get the attention that he requires. We wish him well and all of that. And
All right. Thank you very much, Justin.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have time for one more story? We see your messages coming
Yes.
in, but let's take this one. Ikemesit, on insecurity, celebrities protest at redemption camp. They seek Adeboye's intervention.
Yeah, okay, so a couple of celebrities, chief among whom Charlie Boy, Felix Duke, Baba Frayo, Idris Abdulkarim, Michael Parish, showed up at the redemption camp of the Redeemed Christian Church of God, demanding an audience with the General Overseer, Pastor Adeboye. Unsurprisingly, kind of. Audience wasn't exactly granted. They met, though, can I find him? The National Overseer, Pastor Joshua Abayemi, who spoke to them and assured them that Pastor Adeboye would receive their concerns and he will make the appropriate response. Okay, so essentially the situation with respect to insecurity in the country, they mentioned the Roga settlement issue, they mentioned the farmer herders conflict, they mentioned the continued kidnapping and abduction of
Okay, but can let me stop you there real quick. I mean, we know Pastor Adeboye, right? Why would
and I wrote this down. This is symptomatic of the desperation that many Nigerians feel at the failure of civil constituted authority. We don't feel like we can talk to our politicians. We don't feel we can talk to the people we've elected. And the two bastions of our society that still command some form of authenticity and legitimacy are religious authority figures and our celebrities, right? So if it takes them to be more vocal so that the spotlight will continue to be shone on the issues that matter to us, then we'll make recourse to them.
I have a very quick question. What was the outcome? So before you go out on the project, you have an outcome. You have a result. Expected outcome. What was the expected outcome? So should he then take over as president and legislate? I don't understand. What was supposed to be the outcome?
According to Felix, these are his words. Adeboye has a loud voice. When he speaks, the government listens. Yemi Osibajo is his son. The president listens to him. If he speaks out on these issues, we just want people to hear his voice on these issues. We're not protesting that he's a bad person. We just want people to hear his voice on these issues. They essentially just want him to speak.
No, they just wanted to
Fun fact, though.
Private,
yeah,
and encourage the man of God to speak out on behalf of his children. But protesting and telling me you want him to speak out, well, that's some strong issues.
Side fun fact: what happened the last time Pastor Adeboye spoke?
Exactly.
Yeah. I won't say anything.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Thank you very much, Ikemesit. Thank you very much, Lagos. That's all we can take. But before we leave, we'll take a few messages and then we'll take one message and then call it a morning.
All right. So Yinka says, sorry guys, why was there so much fanfare in the NNPC handover things? Is there much to the office than it appears? Are we all right at all in this part of the world? When they told us 40 he went in hard. All right, we get your point. You're upset at Nigerians and the fact that we're taking so many things, some things that shouldn't be important. But thanks a lot to everyone who's sent in messages, as well as our wonderful analysts. Thanks a lot, Ikemesit, Barrister Ikemesit, and Judge Ike.
Wow, finally,
Twitter.
some respect.
Then,
the last time that happened was like 3 years ago.
And then Justin
In
Ijeh,
the beginning.
Mr. Justin Ijeh at Justin Ijeh on Twitter. Thanks a lot, and thank you everyone. We will continue the conversation at 9 o'clock during Lagos Talks 981, and hopefully Ikemesit will be joining us at that time to discuss. Thank you.
Where money